I mean, I guess the fastest way I could say it is if we, particularly with folks with a science background, if you move from a culture of folks saying no because to yes if, it's much more conducive to tech people being part of that. Because, you know, we've got what, 100 years of the biopharma industry being very risk averse. And technology is the exact opposite. And you have to take calculated risks. So leaders who can say yes if are going to find themselves being successful in those partnerships, and the ones that constantly have these meetings with tech folks saying no because of this, because of that, they'll find themselves 2 years later not having done anything. So it's a small switch. It's 4 words, but I think those are the 4 main words.
You know, I do think that even from my perspective, we're seeing that tech skills are commanding a premium, right? So, and that's for a good reason. But in life sciences, when I think about it, the true innovation happens when we infuse tech expertise with deep scientific knowledge. So it's not an either or. We need teams where data scientists and biologists collaborate from day one, designing solutions together. And I think that's how we drive healthcare forward, by valuing and integrating both sides of the tech equation or the talent equation when it comes to compensation.
Hello. Well, this is the last and highly anticipated panel of the opening ceremony of the Medical Innovation Olympics. And I'm going to frame up this discussion because it deals with something very sensitive today. I personally know a lot of very talented individuals, and I know that there are very few roles that are available for them to apply and for them to best express their talent. We all know how passionate and dedicated life sciences professionals are. However, the current environment are not providing the kind of resources that they need in order to demonstrate their passion. And they're having to pivot in many different ways. We have new ways of working and very variable types of levels at which pharma companies and biotech are implementing these AI technologies. Yet, nevertheless, without an in-depth understanding of the models and that analytics are using, our scientific talent risks not optimizing the use of these new emerging resources. And so I'm here today with a very experienced panel of speakers. We have a representation from both HR executives as well as founders and marketing and investor here as well. Kim Mack, she's founder and principal of HR Reinforced, a fractional HR advisory firm that supports life sciences and other high growth industries. She has about 30 years of hands-on human resources leadership that spans finance, SaaS, private equity-backed organizations. She's built a career on transforming HR from a back office function into a strategic growth engine. And with HR Reinforced, she's currently partnering with executives and founders to design modern people strategies that strengthen culture, compliance, and operational performance. Christina Smith, she's the founder of NeoTerra Consulting Group, a modern HR and recruitment advisory supporting life sciences, digital production, wellness, and other high-growth industries. She has more than 20 years of hands-on experience in talent strategy and people operations. She partners with organizations as a fractional HR leader, helping them design and implement tailored solutions for hiring, culture, and performance. Chris Piedmonte. She has a career spanning over 40 years in engineering and executive management. He's managing director of NeoTerra Capital and has extensive experience forming and nurturing technology startups, managing early stage growth, and performing turnarounds on failing ventures as well. He has developed and brought to market new technologies and products in the enterprise, SMB, and consumer markets. And his skill set includes leadership coaching, team building, startup venture planning as well. Bart Zoni is Senior Vice President of Innovation and Product at Woven Health Collective. And he is an executive founder, entrepreneur with medical affairs, marketing medical communications leadership background, and over 20 years in the industry. He has discovered that the keys to inspiring market innovation include equal measures of clear vision, collaboration, and resourcefulness in getting things done. And his career experience also spans various marketing branded prescription drugs, medical devices, therapeutic sleep products, skincare, and consumer packaged goods. He has a neuroscience degree from Drew University and postgraduate degree from Rutgers. So with that introduction, I think our audience has an image of some of your experiences and your journeys. Let's talk about rewarding science versus technology talent, because these two are complementary, and we know that right now we are having to integrate both. Yet there's different types of expertise: the scientific domain expertise and the machine learning, the engineering expertise from our tech partners as well. Before we dive deeper into this, what lies at the root of rewarding both efficiently in this very rapidly moving talent market? Maybe if each one of you can just provide a preview of the issue here at hand. Kim, would you like to start us off?
Sure. As far as rewarding both, I think a few things have to kind of modify for the new environment that we're going to be all every day, every single day, we're all going to be using AI. So a couple of things that have to on the inside maybe be integrated first before we actually talk about the awards of both the engineers as well as those that are in the medical side. So I think more or less along the lines of making sure that there's no disparity where we're top heavy rewarding the tech people versus the medical people. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more within this conversation on what that might look like. But we want to make sure that we're not calling out and, focusing all attention on the AI because it's front and center right now.
Right. Okay. Christina, let's bring another HR perspective here.
Yes, absolutely. So, I do think that even from my perspective, we're seeing that tech skills are commanding a premium, right? So, and that's for a good reason. But in life sciences, when I think about it, the true innovation happens when we infuse tech expertise with deep scientific knowledge. So it's not an either or. We need teams where data scientists and biologists collaborate from day one, designing solutions together. And I think that's how we drive healthcare forward, by valuing and integrating both sides of the tech equation or the talent equation when it comes to compensation.
Chris or Bart, anything to add there?
Yeah, I'd actually like to echo some of what Christina said, which is right. And a lot of the companies we've started, a lot of the ventures I've worked in, there's been a need for what we call two heads in a box. One who is a domain expert in the problem that's being addressed, that understands the problem at hand, the applications that need to be created, that has the knowledge of the environment, the data, the history, all the things necessary to understand the problem and structure a solution. And on the other side is the technical person, the person who has expertise in applications development, database optimization, data analytics, AI, applications development, all those other components of the tech side. And that working together, they have the best chance of creating a solution that will address the needs, either the enterprise internally or an outward-facing application. But you can't do it with either alone. And that's the challenge that we face, because these people are very different types of people. They're motivated differently. They think differently. And getting that partnership, that integration, is a real challenge.
I think the short-term supply and demand issue, which is driving a lot of that, is going to resolve itself, and companies better have a real idea of what the goals and measurements of value need to be. Because in particularly medical affairs and R&D, the things that drive value are going to be different. And if a company doesn't understand that, when the compensation starts to level itself off, if you don't have a good view of that, it's going to be very difficult to understand what to reward and what not to.
So let's start with the employee life cycle, and let's discuss how we hire the best talent. Last year at this very event, Chris, you mentioned something that is worth repeating here today, that talent, it's a horrible thing to waste, right? Is how you phrased it. Yeah. Wasting talent is truly a crime, right? To be exact. So we are at a time when right now any candidate can simply use ChatGPT or AI, make their CV appear like it's relevant for a particular role, and make it relevant, and stand out amongst the pool of candidates. However, does it really stand out? And are we really basing our decisions based on the best evidence, or are we hiring answers, or are we hiring people, right? So how do we really match the best talent to the best roles today?
So there's a couple platforms that are slowly coming into play. Ripple Match, which matches candidates to roles based on skill sets. And then there's another one called TechWolf AI. So same thing, it'll go out, it'll actually do a gap analysis to figure out what skills are missing and identify those potential candidates or employees if they're in-house. So I think some of the HRIS systems, from my perspective, need to start acclimating that and bringing that into the fold as well. It can't just be employee data, where it's the full scope. You have your employee core, you have your performance management, your compensation. There needs to be that additional piece. And it's got to start with the ATS, applicant tracking system. Some of those have to start, as well as we have to move away from just looking at a job description. And as you said, Tim, kind of revamping our CVs so that they speak to the job description. I think we have to get more into probably examples of their work and more of that skill-based presentation as part of the interview process too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
I agree with what Kim is saying. Yeah, I call it storytelling. Like I do think we have to get better at telling our story. But yeah, legacy HR systems just aren't cutting it anymore, right? Especially in life science where the skill sets are so specialized. We do need smarter tools like AI-driven talent platforms, like Kim was talking about, that actually are looking at the candidates based on their actual skills and their potentials, not just those buzzwords. And I think we have to go beyond the resume. So like work sample interviews or even practical assessments so we can see how candidates, problem solve in real time. So it's not just about finding the right fit. And it is about finding the right fit, not just filling a seat.
Yep. Do you see some companies doing this well or being at the forefront of these gaps and these needs? Are they big? Are they smaller companies? And like any observations?
Honestly, a couple of my colleagues, I had asked, do you even have an AI policy? And there are some that haven't even started that process. So I'm going to say everyone's been talking about it, and it's time to start putting it to, into the mix because it's here. And as everyone, even in the earlier session today, had said, if you're not using AI and taking the trainings and trying to get yourself for the better, you're behind. So yeah. I think the companies too, they have to get on the stick and they have to create that AI policy first and foremost, and make sure that the IT team is working with the HR team internally. Moderna was leading the pack. They actually merged those two departments. So, maybe there's an example there, and I'd love to know what they're doing, on this topic too.
Okay. Yeah, Bart, please.
It might be individual managers doing it well, right? Because ultimately, if you have a person who's in a business leadership role who really just like, well, here's a list of things that I know that we do, so I need someone who checks those boxes. It's not going to be as successful as someone who can listen to an HR partner say, hey, I'd like to challenge your assumptions about what this role needs to be. And when a business leader can accept that and dig into it, then you find that you end up with kind of diverse talent. So, companies can do all the right things. If their leaders aren't on board, it doesn't go anywhere. So I've seen managers and business leaders really get this, and it's going well for them. So, as that prototype becomes more successful and more rewarded, we'll see it more, I think, in companies.
Okay, so you're optimistic about it. So we are getting some questions coming in. As I mentioned, this is going to be a very popular and highly anticipated session, and we'll address them in the last few minutes. I do want to remind everyone to ask questions, post your comments, and we have a slide deck of this presentation that's much more detailed than what we're going to share here. That's in the resources section. Christina alluded to the premium, and I'm just going to highlight this latest report from earlier this year, from July, showing that in the healthcare industry in particular, this is a cross-industry type of sample, but it shows that healthcare industry is right there, where you see a 28% higher premium for jobs with at least one AI skill. Let's transition a little bit and talk about the culture that's needed. To retain, to onboard these diverse skills. Okay, and I'm going to ask Chris and Bart maybe to provide us with two different perspectives. What does the tech expert need to learn from scientific SMEs, subject matter experts, and also vice versa? Who wants to take the tech side in terms of what do the tech?
You choose, Chris.
Yeah, let me take the tech side, because obviously 30 or 40 years of experience in tech and tech ventures is probably best suited. One of the, we haven't really touched on this. I want to touch on this real quick before I answer that. We're talking about experience, skill sets, the things you'd find on a resume, but the things that really matter, at least the things that I think that really matter when it comes to hiring someone, is their intelligence, their motivation, their ability to work as a team, to communicate, to keep a positive attitude when things are challenging, to not be, seeking out blame, but trying to find solutions. And the challenge you have is when you put two people together, the tech side and the business side, if you get the wrong mix, it doesn't work. And it's not because they don't know what to talk about or have the proper interaction, but there's this, social emotional conflict that comes up. But the thing that from the tech side, to come into something like a medical affairs application or other pharma application, maybe it's proteomics, I don't know. The things that motivate them is knowing that what they're doing is going to have an impact, and that they're going to be pushed, to really use their technical skills. The other thing is they have some freedom of action. That when it comes to how things get done and how the work that they're doing is managed is under their control. You'll find that tech people flourish, for the most part, the good ones, when given control and responsibility over the outcome of what they're doing. Those that are micromanaged, that have real talent, real skills, tend to leave. So one of the things that has to happen in the environment is those things need to be understood, and mechanisms put in place to achieve the results, but give these people, the run that they need to be successful.
Okay. And the cultures are quite different, right? But they're converging somewhat, right? You could argue. Bart, what about from science? Yeah, take this.
I mean, I guess the fastest way I could say it is, if we, particularly with folks with a science background, if you move from a culture of folks saying no because to yes if, it's much more conducive to tech people being part of that. Because we've got 100 years of the biopharma industry being very risk averse, and technology is the exact opposite. and you have to take calculated risks. So leaders who can say yes if are going to find themselves being successful in those partnerships, and the ones that constantly have these meetings with tech folks saying no because of this, because of that, they'll find themselves 2 years later not having done anything. So it's a small switch. It's 4 words, but I think those are the 4 main words.
Mm-hmm. One thing that we've seen in the research is that there's a movement away from formal training towards more informal training, but how much of that is really reinforced, and how does that ultimately impact the quality of the drugs that we're developing, the scientific expertise, right? So Kim and Christina, you talked about a very novel concept that maybe I'd like you to bring up in terms of potentially having a new position altogether that merges both talent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I think we're going to have to get creative. I think there's with the tech space, I think that you're going to have to find that niche of an individual that potentially has expertise in the data side as well as the science side. I know we talked about in the creation of these pods, so you have your normal department or function, but then in the life science world where you have to combine, especially the engineers as well as the medical directors, that puts them and that whole engagement and culture and that interaction front and center with building, these type pods. And where I would envision, the layering or the reporting to, they would both have their direct reports to chief medical officer or chief technology officer, but then this lead is above them, and that lead is the one that's talking about the science as well as the data and can speak on both fronts. And then that pod, in essence, has shared outcomes that are part of their metrics. So those rewards ties back to the rewards portion that you were talking about. To be fair, they both have skin in the game towards those same outcomes.
And should those rewards be tied to AI adoption or something else, or outcomes? In your
Well, I think if it's the medical science and the AI, it's going to depend on the environment and the organization itself to be able to back into those specific metrics. I don't think we can say there's a flat blanket statement for that, but I think it has to be individualized.
Yeah. Okay. Christina, how do you champion this? And how do you, in terms of from a leadership and organizational design perspective?
Yeah. So I think the integration starts with being intentional when it comes to like organizational design, right? So thinking about like cross-functional pods and mixing tech and science talent, with clear roles and shared goals. Honestly, I think leaders need to actively bridge that language gap. So having like regular huddles or shared dashboards or even peer mentoring to help kind of demystify both that science and that tech. And then I would say we need to onboard in a way that covers both sides when we're hiring people. So not just focusing on the science context for, specific individuals, but also on the tech side and digital fluency for scientists. So I think it all comes down to that trust and that curiosity. I think people, when they have an understanding of each other's world, that collaboration will flow easier and there will be less friction between the two.
Yep. Okay. So holding each other accountable based on metrics and trust and for a system.
And the guardrails. I mean, I think the AI policy helps set those in motion. That gives the guardrails to, tying it back to what Bart said. We're so used to in the tech space to kind of run full throttle. Whereas in the science side of it, we're used to all the regulatory red tape. So we want to make sure that the conversation, and I know the earlier session talked about it too, we want that governance there for sure. So that, everyone's comfortable with the end result that, goes to the FDA or whoever, you're having to submit to.
Yeah. So there are a couple of questions that I'd like to address.
Bart and I are both out of time, so we're going to have to run.
Okay.
But please don't stop on our account. I'm sure the 3 of you could carry the ball from here.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, well, so there are a couple of questions from Liz and Eddie. If before leaving, please feel free to share maybe in a few seconds the two of you, your final takeaways.
Well, my final takeaway is this is a challenging problem. You have people coming from different cultures, different backgrounds, expecting, different forms of compensation. Yet somehow we've got to get them to work together, the technologists and then the medical professional. We had discussed previously, is it the fact that they need to be cross-trained so they better understand each other? Or do we need to come up with a framework in which they can communicate through some type of, shared agreements on how they're going to interact? I don't know which one would work better. It'd be an interesting experiment if someone has the opportunity to do that and see which results in a better outcome. But it is a challenge, and any problem starts with recognizing that there's a problem. In this case, I think we've got one that's clear that we need to address. That's my final thoughts.
Okay, great. Bart, anything else?
I'd say the moment we get out of pilot-itis and companies realize that new skills and ways of operating are permanent and tied to long-term goals, then things will happen and get pushed down. And it won't be 3 people in the department that know how to do things, but it'll be everybody because it's expected and it's part of your goals, it's part of your reviews. And when it really is that systemic, things happen very rapidly. So once again, thanks everybody. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Bart. So Liz asks this question, Kim and Christina. So she talks about how do you really upskill medical talent in an efficient way? Maybe you can just elaborate on some of your previous comments and remarks, how to get to that balance.
Yeah, I'll start. So I think, the focus is truly on upskilling, right? I think that she's kind of hit the nail on the head, especially in life sciences. So some of the things that I suggest are in kind of thinking outside the box, networking intentionally, seeking out mentors, staying open to new opportunities, even if they're adjacent to your original path. I think flexibility and a growth mindset are really the best assets right now, but really kind of just thinking outside of the box around that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a piece of that, though, needs to be part of the organization's responsibility now, too. I mean, this is something that the organizations are going to be expecting their people just for the sake of everyone having a ChatGPT account, just to create the nicer emails or the the basics. But at the same time, if we expect people to raise their game, then we need to invest in them by giving them the trainings also inside.
Yeah. So Eddie Power asks a very interesting question also, like Liz, about companies using AI to screen applications based on just a submitted CV. How do you work around that to get, which was the, part of that question in the beginning that we raised. And we have agreement here from Liz as well. And actually a response from Bart before he left, that, very quickly this can become AI generated resumes and created to match AI descriptions. So, yeah. So, well, you shared some there, Kim, but anything else to address that question?
I'll kind of let Christina take that one.
Sure. I was going to say, you got to still have the human involved, right? So, as much as we want AI to take some of that workload off of us in recruiting, I still think we need human eyes on it, and we have to set the parameters of that AI system to properly rate those resumes. So not just focusing on tech skills, but behavioral skills and things like that as well. And not just focusing on the skill, but the organizational fit, the job fit, those pieces. So I'm all for AI, but I do think that you still have to have that human body actively involved in that process, just to ensure that we are covering cultural and things like that as well.
And not everything on the HR side with regards to the applicant tracking system using AI is perfect yet.
Right.
We saw with the lawsuit Workday's going through right now.
Yeah.
So, I think companies are hesitant and kind of watching that case to see how it unfolds before they commit 100% into this. And I think that's just one example of how we're not 100% certain on all factors of this. I think about it in protecting data. There's anything you put into Chat GPT is not secure. So how do we know, that's the number one thing HR is supposed to watch over is the people data, making sure that it remains confidential. So to what extent are we able to put those parameters in place to make sure we're doing our job and yet being compliant, to the outward candidate or employees applying to positions?
Mm-hmm. I think also there's the problem of just the sheer pool of candidates out there, which is making it challenging for humans to make that decision, which you both know better than I do probably. And but I also like one of the suggestions earlier about work samples. And in fact, on that note, there's a question from Eddie Power again to you both about whether or not you would consider a video submission for a candidate.
I've seen them. Yeah, I think people are already leading the way with this, not just with resumes, but on LinkedIn. We found that it's more impactful for people to give you a video message than just typing a message because it's more personable. And, it shows a lot more of you than it does a piece of paper. But yes, I have seen companies being open to this piece and encouraging. It's optional is what I've seen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
And memorable. Makes you more memorable too.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And is it proactively volunteered by the candidate or is it required?
So how I've seen it is when they apply, that they can not only submit their resume, but they can also provide a video introduction of themselves. I've also seen it as they get later in the process, doing it from a kind of that work sample perspective, where they're asked the question and then they're responding, to how they would handle it with a specific situation, task, action, result, and so forth.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. It's logical, and I'm hoping that we're making faster advances in this area. That's why I was very intrigued and looking forward to this panel. Thank you both for your time. How optimistic are you about the improvements, and what are some of your final takeaways and lessons for many who are concerned about this?
Honestly, I think it's going to be a positive overall. I think it's just going to take us all time to make sure that we lay the proper foundations and frameworks within each organization and the training. I think that's going to be critical internally, especially if we're tying any metrics in the future to, use of to a degree, depending on the role of AI, and those adjustments of the metrics as well as outcomes, for, and creativity. I don't know if the pod is the real, future, but I think it's going to be leadership and HR kind of coming together and reworking the organizational design to cover this is going to be super impactful and how do we make it work internally? So.
Christina.
Yeah, I agree with what Kim said. I think at the end of the day, success, is about people. Right. We have to have the right people in the right seats, but I think we also have to bring together like diverse skill sets and perspectives and passion and keep that in mind as we're hiring, because it creates that space for learning and championing real collaboration. So, I'm optimistic.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. I invite you both to continue to connect with all of us here and over the next 16 days and maybe provide some commentary on some of the resources that have been shared. Let us know what questions you have about the slides as well from this presentation. Yes.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it's been an honor.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.